The moment Anthony Hopkins stepped onto the Loose Women stage, nobody could have predicted how dramatically the interview would spiral out of control. The atmosphere began with a polished calm, applause from the audience, warm smiles from the panel, and the gentle charm Hopkins was known for. Yet from the very first seconds, there was an unspoken tension just beneath the surface, as if the air itself sensed what was coming before anyone else did. Hopkins carried himself with quiet dignity, offering polite greetings, but his eyes revealed fatigue, perhaps impatience, or simply a desire for a meaningful conversation instead of midday tabloid theatrics. Denise Welch, however, seemed to interpret his reserve as a personal challenge she was eager to escalate. The early minutes of the interview unfolded normally. Hopkins discussed his latest project, reflecting on how age had brought unexpected clarity to his work. The audience listened attentively, drawn to the rhythm of his voice, the wisdom in his phrasing. He spoke of film sets, mentorship, creativity, and the fragile balance between ambition and discipline. Even the panelists seemed entranced, except Denise, whose smile gradually tightened as Hopkins continued to glide around the more sensational topics she attempted to introduce. She first interrupted him subtly, then more directly, inserting pointed comments disguised as questions. Hopkins maintained his composure, answering with characteristic grace, but each interruption chipped away at the thin layer of patience he had begun the interview with. It was as though Denise believed the interview was too controlled, too elegant, too unlike the fiery, headline-grabbing exchanges that often fueled the show's viral moments. She wanted friction, and she was willing to drag it out of him. Everything shifted when she leaned forward, eyes sharp, and delivered the question that lit the fuse. "Some colleagues say you're difficult to work with. Do you think that's a fair assessment?" The room reacted instantly. Even through the cameras, viewers could feel the collective wince. Hopkins looked straight at her, stunned not by the question itself. He'd heard worse in his long career, but by its timing, its tone, and the blatant attempt to provoke. His response was controlled, almost too controlled. "I don't engage in rumor," he said. Denise nodded, pretending acceptance, but before anyone else could speak, she pressed again, her voice slightly louder, her expression slightly sharper. "But surely the public deserves honesty. Shouldn't you address what people say about you?" Hopkins's eyes darkened, not in anger, but in sheer disbelief that the conversation had been dragged into such trivial mudslinging. He answered again, firmly. "I'm here to discuss my work. If you're looking for a scandal, you won't find it with me." The studio audience applauded lightly, sensing an imbalance, hoping the moment would pass. But Denise was determined. "So you're saying all the stories about you being difficult are false?" "Every single one. The repetition, the insistence, it was too much." Hopkins's silence felt heavier than any words he could have spoken. Then, what followed became the moment replayed millions of times online. He calmly removed his microphone, set it gently on the table, and stood. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't lash out. He simply said, "I don't need to be spoken to like this," and turned away. His exit was slow, deliberate, dignified, so powerful that even without shouting, he created one of the most explosive walk-offs daytime television had ever seen. The rest of the panel sat frozen, unsure whether to apologize, continue, or cut to commercial. Denise tried to maintain her composure, but the shock on her face betrayed her. The audience's silence echoed louder than applause ever could. Within minutes, social media erupted with clips, commentary, outrage, and disbelief. And thus, what began as an ordinary interview became a moment of live TV history, leaving viewers stunned by just how quickly respect can unravel when provocation replaces professionalism. The fallout from Anthony Hopkins's dramatic walk-off didn't end when he left the stage. It was only the beginning of what turned into one of the most dissected moments in daytime television. As he exited with calm finality, the atmosphere inside the Loose Women studio collapsed into a stunned vacuum. For the first time in the show's long and often chaotic history, even Denise Welch, a woman known for her composure during heated debates, seemed genuinely rattled. Her confidence faltered, her usual bright expression clouded with confusion and defensiveness. The audience sat frozen, unsure whether they were witnessing a scripted twist, a misunderstanding, or the kind of raw, unscripted tension that daytime TV rarely allowed to unfold. One of the other hosts attempted to salvage the moment by awkwardly calling for a commercial break, but the producers hesitated, perhaps hoping Hopkins might return or fearing that cutting away too soon would signal chaos. The hesitation left the hosts exposed, forced to fill the air with improvised commentary. Denise tried to laugh, brushing off the incident as a miscommunication, but her voice wavered, betraying the discomfort simmering beneath her practiced nonchalance. Backstage, crew members rushed after Hopkins, not to coax him back but to ensure he was all right. Witnesses later described him as composed but deeply disappointed. Not angry, disappointed. It was the kind of disappointment that stings far more than rage, a quiet declaration that the environment had failed to meet even the most basic expectations of respect. He thanked the crew politely, declined all requests to return, and asked for a car. That simple decision, to leave entirely, not just the set but the building, became the symbolic spine of what viewers soon labeled the Hopkins incident. Meanwhile on stage, the panel struggled to regain control. One host attempted to steer the conversation toward the importance of respectful interviewing, but Denise cut in, insisting that she had merely asked a fair question. Her tone was defensive, sharper than before, the adrenaline of unexpected confrontation pushing her into justification mode. She explained that interviews should explore all sides of a public figure, but the viewers watching live weren't convinced. The energy in the room had shifted too drastically, too visibly. Social media erupted instantly. Thousands of comments flooded in, some defending Hopkins's right to walk away from a disrespectful line of questioning, others accusing Denise of purposely pushing boundaries for the sake of drama. Clips of the moment were uploaded, dissected, slowed down, repeated from multiple angles. A simple raised eyebrow from Hopkins became a symbol of authority. The calm removal of his microphone was hailed as iconic, classy, and even Shakespearean. Midday television had unexpectedly produced a moment with the dramatic weight of a filmed scene, and viewers couldn't stop talking about it. In the hours that followed, public opinion began to tilt. Media outlets released think pieces about the responsibilities of interviewers, the balance between journalistic inquiry and sensationalist provocation, and the dignity celebrities were entitled to, no matter how famous they were. Hopkins's long-standing reputation for professionalism worked strongly in his favor. People who had never watched Loose Women found themselves replaying the clip, analyzing the expressions of each panelist, noticing the precise second the situation turned from uncomfortable to catastrophic. Denise, on the other hand, found herself facing a level of scrutiny she likely hadn't anticipated. Her attempt to cast her question as harmless met resistance from viewers who felt she had deliberately escalated the tension. It wasn't that she asked a difficult question. Celebrities face tough questions all the time. It was the insistence, the repetition, the unmistakable tone of provocation that people couldn't ignore. By the next morning, #HopkinsWalkOff was trending across multiple platforms. Fan edits turned his exit into dramatic montages, complete with music and slow-motion effects. Commentators praised his restraint, calling it a masterclass in self-respect. The show's producers released a cautious statement expressing regret that the interview had not gone as planned. They did not name Denise, but the subtext was unmistakable: this was not the outcome they wanted. And so, what began as a standard daytime interview transformed into a cultural moment, a reminder that even in the age of viral sensationalism, dignity still has its own kind of power, and Anthony Hopkins had demonstrated it without raising his voice or uttering a single cruel word. In the days that followed Anthony Hopkins's unforgettable walk-off, the incident continued to dominate headlines, social feeds, and talk shows across the country. What had started as a single uncomfortable exchange on Loose Women spiraled into a cultural debate about respect, celebrity boundaries, and the increasingly aggressive nature of daytime television. Hopkins himself remained silent, refusing to comment further, which only intensified public fascination. Silence, when held by someone of his gravitas, carried more weight than any interview or statement ever could. Behind the scenes, the Loose Women production team found themselves in a state of quiet turmoil. Meetings stretched late into the night as producers reviewed footage, analyzed audience reactions, and debated how to move forward. Some argued that the show should stand by Denise Welch's approach, citing the importance of authentic, unfiltered conversation. Others insisted that this moment had crossed a line, risking the show's reputation and future guest bookings. Even within the staff, opinions clashed fiercely. Some admired Hopkins's refusal to entertain provocation, others believed he had overreacted. The divide created an atmosphere of tension that lingered throughout the week. As for Denise, she attempted to continue as normal on the show, but everyone could see the strain beneath her polished exterior. She laughed a bit too hard, spoke a bit too quickly, and avoided addressing the incident directly. Yet, the more she tried to appear unfazed, the more viewers sensed the pressure she was under. Comment sections overflowed with heated discussions about her behavior. Clips comparing her interviewing style with that of other hosts circulated widely, often unflatteringly. It became clear that this wasn't just a moment people would move past, it was becoming part of her public image. Meanwhile, Hopkins's fans rallied with remarkable passion. They shared stories about his kindness, his decades of professionalism, and his well-known preference for calm, respectful dialogue. Former co-stars posted anecdotes praising his humility and generosity on set. Directors spoke of his dedication, his focus, and the peaceful atmosphere he brought to productions. The contrast between these glowing portrayals and his treatment on Loose Women only deepened the sympathy he received. It wasn't simply that he had walked off, it was that of all people, he was the last person viewers expected to see pushed into such an undignified situation. Entertainment analysts speculated that this moment could shift broader industry norms. They pointed out that daytime talk shows had grown increasingly reliant on tension, confrontation, and sensationalist questions to maintain ratings, sometimes at the expense of decency. Hopkins's exit, they argued, could become a turning point, a reminder that not all guests were willing to play along with the pressure to produce viral content. Some predicted that more celebrities would begin demanding stricter interview conditions, or even refuse certain platforms entirely. Others feared it would encourage shows to double down, chasing controversy with even sharper tactics. At home, Hopkins reportedly spent the evening after the incident in quiet reflection. Those close to him shared that he wasn't angry, just weary. He had reached a point in his life where he valued peace above everything else. He had no desire to defend himself against sensationalism, and no interest in participating in media theatrics. Life is short, he had once said in an interview. Too short for unnecessary noise. That belief seemed to shine through his entire response to the situation. As the online storm intensified, Loose Women finally addressed the issue on air. Without naming anyone directly, they expressed regret, acknowledging that the interview had deviated from its intended tone. They emphasized their respect for all guests and their desire to provide a welcoming environment. It was a diplomatic statement, crafted carefully, but viewers detected the tension beneath the surface. Even after the initial buzz began to fade, the incident left an undeniable mark. It became one of those rare moments in television where authenticity clashed violently with expectation, where a celebrity's quiet dignity overshadowed any attempt to provoke drama. Anthony Hopkins didn't need to shout, argue, or retaliate. His calm departure spoke louder than any confrontation could. And in doing so, he reminded millions of viewers around the world that sometimes the most powerful response is simply to walk away.